So here I'm going to be giving a review of Peter Pan and Wendy, the new movie that just debuted on Disney Plus. Now, like almost everyone out there, my only sort of real familiarity with these fairy tale type stories is through the eyes of Disney with their animated films, and that same goes with Peter Pan, where my only sort of real familiarity with that story is through Disney's 1953 animated classic Peter Pan, which is one of my favorite Disney movies. It's one of this magical, classic Silver Age Disney kind of stuff. Now, outside of Disney, there's been many live-action versions of Peter Pan, with the notable ones being Hook from 1991, Peter Pan from 2003, and most recently Pan from 2015. Out of all of these, Hook is the only one that achieved any kind of real success and is regarded in any kind of positive fashion. And now we have Disney's Peter Pan and Wendy, which follows the same sort of general format and style and direction they've been doing with their live-action remakes over the last decade or so. Peter Pan and Wendy brings the familiar story of Disney's Peter Pan to live action, with all the notable story elements and characters you would expect: Peter Pan, Tinkerbell, Wendy, Captain Hook, Mr. Smee, the Crocodile, Tiger Lily, you name it. Now, it should be noted that this movie was made for Disney Plus, which means the production value and quality of Disney Plus movies can be pretty hit or miss, more miss to be honest. I thought the initial London parts of this movie though looked great and had a real great sort of real cinematic feel to it. The movie also has a pretty nice final climactic action sequence, so a decent amount of money was spent here to where the production value wasn't really the issue for the most part. Now, there's been enough of these Disney live-action remakes of their animated films to where I really sort of put them into three categories in terms of how they're done. You have the first category, which is the Maleficent and Cruella category, where it's really almost an original story that takes those characters and puts them in sort of a new perspective in terms of writing and whatnot. Then you have the middle category, which is the Aladdin and Cinderella from 2015 category, which the familiar structure and characters of that original film, but there's enough differences here and there to sort of freshen things up and give them their own life in their own right. And then you have the third category, which is the carbon copy category, with stuff like The Lion King and Lady and the Tramp, which really almost is a shot-for-shot remake to where you could just line it up or play it with that original animated film, and there'd be barely any differences. I would put Peter Pan and Wendy into that second category with Aladdin and Cinderella from 2015, where it's the familiar story of Disney's Peter Pan, but there's a decent amount of changes here and there to freshen things up and give it its own life. That story, that original story of Peter Pan, has a lot of charm and magic to it, and that mostly translates here to the parts that you would expect, most notably the London bits, the You Can Fly sequence, which was really fun. It's one of my favorite sequences in that original Peter Pan, probably my favorite sequence. Here it doesn't have that same sort of extensive musical element to it, but overall it's still pretty solidly done. And the actual ending here is done pretty well and has that magical, heartwarming feeling that the original film had. Now, initially going in to watch this film, I thought the biggest change would be Wendy's role here. With her name being in the title, it felt like they were going to go for that ultra girl power type thing and having her take center stage over any character, notably Peter Pan himself. As it turns out, the only reason why the film, I think, was titled Peter Pan and Wendy was to sort of distinguish it from other adaptations of Peter Pan. Wendy's role here is about what you would expect. There's a few changes to where she's less, I guess, of a fantasy dreamer, a little bit more serious, and I guess takes more action here and there. But overall, her role was fine here, and I thought the actress that played her did a good job. The biggest change here isn't nothing to do with any ethnicity changes when it comes to the characters, but it's a relationship when it comes to Peter Pan and Hook. A deep backstory is added here for the two that adds an added level of nuance. I don't really mind this because for live action remake, I think you do need an added level of nuance for live action film, and you can't really rely on those sort of cartoon shenanigans, which work for a cartoon, but I'm not sure would have really worked for a live action film. You know, with here, Captain Hook, he's not as cartoonish as he was in the original film, but like I said, for a live action adaptation, that makes sense, and Jude Law, for how the character was written, I think did a pretty solid job here as Captain Hook. That sort of added dynamic between Peter Pan and Captain Hook honestly did save this movie, because the film, once it got to Neverland, it did have a stretch where it was starting to stink. You know, just started to dip into live action Disney's Pinocchio territory. It was really just sort of a workman-like effort. You know, it was just there, it was going through the motions, and some of the stuff just wasn't really looking good. Most notably the sort of skull rock sequences. What really saved the movie at that point was the crocodile sequence, which was holy shit in terms of level of viciousness and not the cartoon slapstick that was in the original film. But once the new dynamic between Peter Pan and Hook started to take hold, I started to appreciate the film for trying something different, and it did actually make me wonder how things would play up with this new added level of dynamic between Peter Pan and Hook. And as I mentioned before, the final action set piece that takes place on the ship is done pretty well here, to where it has some creative bits, some nice dynamics, some fun elements, it's adventurous. Overall, it's solid how the climax was done here. There will be a lot of initial apprehension for this film for various reasons, whether it's the casting or just general fatigue when it comes to Disney live-action remakes. But for those who give the film a chance, I actually think it's okay. I would give Peter Pan and Wendy a 7 out of 10. For every potential lackluster decision, like Tinkerbell not being the jealous little gold digger who's mad at Wendy, there's something to make up for it, like an action sequence or a magical type moment here and there. But for those not that enthused about watching this movie, well, don't worry, because another installment of the Disney live-action universe is right around the corner. So that'll do it for this review of Peter Pan and Wendy. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.